Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's session. We're really excited to present to you the multimodal capabilities of Google's Gemini model. So really excited to get into this. We've got some great demos, some great content for you, and really just happy to be here with you on this journey through this massive technological shift and show you some of the capabilities that are involved here. I'm going to be working with you today. My name is Dan Waters. I'm an AI specialist customer engineer here at Google. And joining me is Keelan McDonald. She's an outbound product manager. Keelan, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. So good to see you again. I've been on a few of these events, so happy to be back here, closing out 2023. And as Dan mentioned, I'll be kicking us off, giving you guys a bit of an overview here on where you can start finding Gemini today in Google Cloud. And then Dan's going to get kind of more in the weeds here with some great demos of what's available. All right. And with that, let's get right into it. Okay. So as Dan mentioned, this is a big shift for us here at Google, bringing us into the Gemini era, and we're really excited, one, to be able to bring this to you before the end of the year, but also to bring it to you in public preview, meaning that anybody can get started building today. So we'll talk a little bit about the current capabilities, sort of where we see the future of Gemini, and get into some of those details here. So what makes Gemini the next chapter of Gen AI innovation here at Google? Really, there's a couple components that make Gemini a uniquely capable model, especially compared to some of the foundation models that we've offered in the past. This has been a massive collaboration across our company between Google DeepMind, between many different research teams. So a lot of folks were involved in taking us forward with Gemini, and I think you'll really see the impact of that work here when you start to use it. So there's sort of three pillars that we think about in terms of the technological distinction of Gemini versus previous families of foundation models. And we'll go through each of these in a little bit more depth, but just kind of want to lay out how we think about these from a developer perspective. So number one is that this is a state-of-the-art natively multimodal model. So what we mean by that is that it's really trained on a massive pre-training data set of multimodal inputs. So this is not a case where we have a bunch of single modality models sort of strung together and then sort of offered over a single API endpoint. This is actually a model that's taken into account multimodality at its training roots. And really what this allows us to do is be a lot more effective in terms of handling those multimodal inputs, because the data or the training of the model has incorporated multimodality from the very beginning. Second, we're really interested in offering developers optimization and choice. And so really what that means is that we've set up the hardware and the serving infrastructure to make this model fast, to make this model cost efficient for developers, and to give us a lot of flexibility just in terms of the different sizes and offerings around Gemini. And then finally, of course, responsible AI is a key component of how we at Google do all AI. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the changes that we made over the last year in terms of our AI and safety considerations when developing Gemini. Okay, so in terms of the state-of-the-art capabilities here, I talked a minute ago about the native multimodality, and I do hope that you guys will enjoy experimenting with this a little bit over the holidays with these new APIs. But the reason that we're so pleased with the capabilities of this model is that we've really seen extraordinary results across a wide variety of industry benchmarks. So I'd encourage you to check out the technical report that was published alongside the other kind of developer artifacts and blogs recently. It really gets into a lot of depth in terms of the performance of this model against common industry benchmarks, tests that you'll see for a lot of these. So particularly, you're going to see really strong performance on the MMLU test, which is a very common test for LLMs, as well as Math Vista. So these are indicators to us that from a reasoning perspective, from a performance perspective, on that front, Gemini is really a cut above previous models that we've developed, and is really offering us strong signals for the potential as we continue to develop this model family. And then third is Gemini's sophisticated reasoning capabilities. So we have increasingly seen over the last few months our customers bringing us more and more sophisticated, complex use cases, often with chain of thought prompting. These are very, very complex use cases that are not, sort of the typical kind of summarization or Q&A use cases, but really involve asking the model to make fairly sophisticated inference off of, quite complex uh, uh, prompts that might have many thousands of characters or tokens in them. Again, kind of reflected in those benchmarks that I mentioned earlier, Gemini has performed really, really well against these types of use cases. And so we're super excited to bring that to our developers and customers to see if we can cover a broader range of needs in that space. And second, we have the highly optimized for preserving choice here. So again, probably many of you are familiar with Google's TPUs. These are kind of custom built chips that are designed to run these AI workloads. They've obviously been really critical for us as we've built Gemini, just in terms of being able to efficiently train such a large model. But we continue to offer that efficiency through the way that we serve the model, and also just in terms of the performance for the APIs. So and again, what you're going to see from us in terms of the Gemini family currently is these three models. Gemini Pro is what you're currently going to be able to access through the APIs on cloud. Gemini Ultra, which is our biggest, most capable version of Gemini, is coming out in early 2024. And then Gemini Nano is actually designed to run on small hardware. So you'll see it on the Pixel 8 phone today. So not a cloud product per se, but just wanted to mention it as part of just this sort of overall Gemini family, because it is just another way that we're able to deliver that state-of-the-art technology sort of up and down the different use cases and sizes there. All right. And then finally, safety and responsibility. Again, many of you are familiar with Google's posture around RAI and safety, and we took that very seriously with the launch of the Palm family earlier this year. We've learned a lot, I think, just in terms of the feedback from our customers around what is preeminent in terms of their priorities around safety. We've learned a lot from external researchers, from our own employees, and we've really sort of taken those learnings into account in terms of developing the safety framework around Gemini. So for one, we've developed, I think, a much more comprehensive set of safety evals. This is helping us be a lot more sophisticated and targeted in terms of detecting toxicity and other issues, while still preserving output across a lot of different types of use cases. Finally, we've developed and continued to build out our teams that do novel research into potential risk areas. I know there's been a lot of super interesting papers published this year by third-party researchers, kind of figuring out different ways that that safety filters and other responsible AI frameworks can be manipulated by outside parties. And so we've really kind of taken a lot of that feedback into account, and very carefully implemented new policies around how we can be better about having the right safety filters for our customers. And then finally, we've collaborated with a diverse group of external experts and partners. We know at Google that while obviously we have a lot of brilliant people here at Google, we can often have a narrow view that's focused on Google priorities. We want to hear from the broader community about what's important, about the ways that our products can be better. And so taking into account that feedback has been a really important part of how we've addressed safety. All right. So this is probably one of the most critical slides for you all as Google Cloud developers. So really want to just kind of narrow in on this one. So again, what you can use today as you're celebrating the holidays or closing out the year here are two different endpoints on Google Cloud. For one, we have the Gemini Pro text-only input endpoint. And so that endpoint is going to allow you to input text and output text. So that is, again, available today on cloud. And then second is this Gemini Pro Vision endpoint. So this is the multimodal endpoint, and again, allowing you to input text, image, and video. And Dan is going to show you some really cool examples of this in just a minute, and output text. So get started as soon as you can. These are definitely available today. And I should also add that we're in a public preview phase right now. So these products are actually available for free until the middle of January. So this is definitely a great time to take advantage of that and start experimenting. Okay, and then finally, for all you developers out there, just a reminder, I know many of you are familiar, obviously, with cloud, and many of you are familiar with Vertex. I just want to acknowledge that we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the developer community over the last year or so, especially as we've rolled out more of these AI APIs. And so we've really tried to up our game in terms of what we're offering for developers to get started. So I want to highlight just a few of these things. And again, Dan is also going to show these through his demo. But first and foremost, we've really tried to make an extensive library of quick starts available to you developers. So, especially for folks that are new to AI, maybe you're an experienced app builder or a different type of developer, but you want to start experimenting with AI, we've offered these quick starts to make it really, really easy to get going. Number two, on that same kind of front, we have free developer labs. So hopefully you guys have had a chance to interact with some of those labs in the past at Cloud Skills Boost. If not, definitely check it out. Cloud Skills Boost is an awesome resource. It's a mix of videos, notebooks, other types of resources that'll help you learn as a developer about the entire Google Cloud stack. And there's quite a bit both around Vertex and then more recently about around our Gen AI products. Third, for those of you that are really starting to develop production use cases and trying to figure out what that end-to-end flow is going to look like, we have robust integrations with a number of popular third-party developer tools, including LangChain, Llama Index, Pinecone, and Weaviate. So we know that these are really essential to sort of getting your applications with these APIs stood up. It's very common for us to see use cases where you're using many Google services, but also using many third-party services. We want to make that integration really easy, and so we've invested a lot in making these integrations ready for Gemini on day one. And then finally, back in the Google ecosystem, though, I do want to mention that we also have packages and extensions that natively support these foundation models in our app developer frameworks like Firebase and Flutter. I believe this week we actually launched our Gemini extension for Firebase. We previously offered a Palm extension. So if you are a developer on one of those platforms, that should make it even easier for you to interact with some of these models and APIs. Okay, and if you are familiar with Gen AI Studio, just a couple quick points here. The prompt gallery that we're offering now should look pretty familiar, but with a multimodal twist. So what you're seeing here is the new prompt gallery for the Gemini multimodal endpoint. So this is a fantastic place to get started, both because before you start building anything programmatically, if you just want to sort of get in the playground and get a sense of Gemini's performance, this is really your go-to destination. It's also great if you're just sort of at the beginning of your journey, still figuring out your use case, but just sort of want to get a sense of Gemini's capabilities. You can just sort of test out these prompts, edit them, modify them. And as you sort of get more of a sense of what you might want to build, obviously start to build and kind of instantiate your own prompts as well. All right. And so just a kind of quick recap here on all the tools that we're bringing you on the Vertex platform for generative AI. We've got Gemini right there kind of in the middle in the Model Garden. So just as a reminder, Model Garden is our one-stop shop for developers to discover over 130 first-party, open source, and partner models. So we're obviously focusing on Gemini today, and we think Gemini is a pretty great model. But we also want to acknowledge that there are many different use cases. Many use cases require different types of models. And so we really want to bring you a library of curated models to sort of meet any of the needs that you might have there. So it's a great place to just sort of start discovering and testing if you haven't already been there. And then on top of that, the other thing I just wanted to point out in the stack here is all the tools that we have to help you sort of enrich and extend these models, whether it's extensions, connectors, grounding, distillation, tuning. These are all tools on Vertex that are designed to make it possible for developers to customize or create more domain specificity, or continue to sort of develop the model's knowledge of the world beyond its last checkpoint. So these are all great ways for you as a developer to continue to make these models even better for the use case that you have. All right, and then just kind of closing things out. It's been a long year in AI, and we're really excited to see where everything has gone. Just to kind of get you oriented here, where we were over the last few years is really in the world of predictive AI, and so many of you are familiar with this world. This is the world of forecasting and entity extraction and regression and classification, and a lot of progress was made in this space over the last 20 years or so. And then all of a sudden, in the last year or two, we found ourselves in this new era of generative AI. And so this was all the text and image and code generation that we started seeing in the world over the last few years, and increasingly in the space of the enterprise and for business use cases. What we're seeing as we go into 2024 and beyond is really the world of multimodal generative AI, and that's where Gemini is taking us as well. So these are, all the good things that we've already seen from our core, kind of Palm family and other models that we've offered in the past, but just increasingly advanced capabilities. So better image understanding, better spatial reasoning and logic understanding, mathematical reasoning, VQ&A, these types of use cases that were, very preliminary for some of these models, even early in 2023, are starting to really come into their own in terms of capabilities as we enter 2024. So we're really excited to see Gemini now on the scene, and also to see Gemini continuing to move into this dimension. All right, and with that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Dan to give us a little bit of a live show and tell in terms of how Gemini actually works.
Great. Thank you so much, Keelan. Really appreciate it. That was a great overview. And I've been along for the ride with many of you out there in the developer community this last year, right? Starting with large language models, right? That was kind of a tectonic shift in what we can do for business applications, right? But now with Gemini, with the Vision Pro model, we're kind of shifting our focus and our excitement from large language models alone to these large multimodal models, right? And what makes Gemini special is, rather than sort of chaining together understandings of different modalities, from text to vision, everything else, Gemini is really built from the ground up to have those multimodal understandings. So it's able to make connections between, how something is encoded in the world in video or audio or text, and it brings it a lot closer to how humans perceive the world. So it's really kind of driving an evolution in how we need to think about building business solutions, because previously we're thinking about just text. Now we have all these other tools available, right? So my goal today is to show you what multimodal reasoning is really capable of, and it's pretty mind-blowing. So one of the first places that you can start, as Keelan mentioned, is here in Vertex AI Studio. This is part of Google Cloud, the Google Cloud Console. And we still have everything available that we've had all year for you, from the text models, the Palm models, Bison, everything else, as well as Imagine, our image generation, which also just got a really cool refresh too. But you'll see this new sort of multimodal area here. Again, this is the prompt gallery that Keelan showed in her slides. Really easy, quick way to kind of just get up and running with some basic understanding of what you can do with this really capable and really amazing model. I did want to just quickly show an example of this. So, you can open up any of these sample prompts, but put yourself in the mindset of a student or somebody who's trying to work on a project or just trying to solve a problem, right? A good example would be like, I'm halfway through this math problem. I'm completely stuck. I don't know what to do. Take a photo of it, and then send it to the model and then get some reasoning. So like, here's an example of our attention is all you need paper that kind of precipitated a lot of this, exponential growth in this field. Let's say that I'm presented with this diagram. I can take a screenshot of it, right? Assuming that I found this somewhere else and I don't know what it is, right? I can bring it over to Vertex AI Studio, and then using Gemini Pro Vision, I can say, what is this? And then I can paste that screenshot directly into the UI here, and we can start messing around with it, right? And there should be a diagram of a transformer architecture, right? So we'll let Gemini respond. The image shows the architecture. Let me zoom in here, which is a type of neural network. It has two main parts, an encoder and a decoder. It explains how the transformer works, right? So that's an image to text multimodal use case, right? You can do things in the other direction. You can go from image to image, or text to text. Like, there's many different things that you can do across these modalities to leverage that sort of built-in multimodal understanding that Gemini is capable of. And of course here, there's different parameters. There's temperature that everybody's probably familiar with, right? The higher the temperature, the more sort of creative and randomness gets introduced into the response. And token limit, safety settings, everything else that you want to experiment with and play with is available for you here in the UI, right? When you've got an interesting prompt that you think can solve a problem that you're working on, you can also click this little Get Code button up here. You just hit that, and then it explains how to use this either in Python or Node or Java, or if you're just doing sort of like home-baked API calls, we explain how to do that as well. So this kind of gets you into the code world. And so we're just going to transition over here to Colab Enterprise. So this is a really great resource that we're going to sort of talk again at the end of the session about. We have a lot of really great notebooks here on our GitHub page. that will explain how to get up and running. And then you can run these in whatever environment of your choosing. You can run it in the regular Google Colab that's part of Drive. You can run it in Colab Enterprise here in Google Cloud. Really up to you. VS Code with Duet, right? It's really very easy to get up and running with. So check this out. We're gonna take a look at this first multimodal notebook. I've already done some of this. I think hopefully we don't have to rerun anything here. But just kind of getting over some of the helper functions here. We want to just first of all understand what's in some images, right? So in this particular case, I'll go ahead and run this, and this is going to show us a picture of some fruit in a basket, right? So this is the image that we're looking at. It's 2 bananas and 3 apples, right? It's actually rerunning it while I'm talking, but and then the way that we've structured the prompt here. So we have some instructions. How much should I pay for the fruits given the following price list? That's prompt number 1. Prompt number 2, answer the question through these steps. So we're giving Gemini some capabilities and some instructions on how to reason through this problem. And then as you see here, we're interleaving multimodal prompts, text along with the actual image. And then there's another text prompt here, and then there's another image. And then there's the final prompt that explains what to do. So with Gemini, you can interleave different modalities, right? You can pass it a video and ask it a question, right? You can, pass it some text and then pass it a video. Like, it's really up to you and the use case that you want to support here. And then we run multimodal model.generate content using all of these interleaved contents, right? And then we also have a streaming capability as well. So you can see components of the response as it's going, as opposed to waiting for the entire thing to, fully finish the prediction and then get it back to you. So that really helps. So here's what we're actually looking at. We have a prompt, instructions, consider the following image that contains fruits. How much should I pay for the fruits giving the following price list? This price list is an image. It's a JPEG, right? This is not structured data that we have access to in a database. It's just an image, right? So how much should I pay for these fruits? So again, we're teaching the model to reason by counting the fruits that it sees and then associating it to the price per item. And the way that this works is we kind of scroll down. This is the prompt that's been printed. Answer this question, and then here's the response from the model, right? So it's answering step by step. There's 3 bananas and 2 apples. That's correct. Quantity of apples is 3. Quantity of bananas is 2. Okay, we've gone from identifying how many there are to putting it into some kind of an understanding that Gemini now has, right? And then we're extracting the price of each of these items and then calculating the subtotal price for everything that we see in the image and then getting the total price that we should pay for the bananas, right? So this is all just the multimodal understanding, giving it text, giving it images, and then think about how much technology would have been required to build something like this a year ago, right? How difficult that would have been. So when you're thinking about deploying multimodal use cases in your organization, you really have like so many more amazing tools that you can use to pull together knowledge from different sources and just give that context to the model and let it run, right? This completely changes how you might go about deploying generative AI in your organization and in the work that you do. Let's take a look at another one. This is one of my favorites. So this is a question about, we have a stove we're trying to reset the clock. That's kind of what's going on here, right? So we have an image of a stove. And again, we're asking it, how do I reset the clock on this appliance? We're not telling it what appliance it is. It's just a picture, right? We don't have a manual. We don't have access to any of that stuff. But provide the instructions in English and French. And then if the instructions include buttons, please explain where those buttons are physically located so I can go reset the clock, right? So it's an interleaved content array. We have an image of the stove and then the prompt, and then we're generating the contents. And then, so this is the image of the stove itself. You can see there's a little clock button right here underneath the delay start button. And this is just a photo that somebody took of their stove. So how can I reset the clock on this appliance? Provide the instructions, and then it's actually giving us a JSON result back as well. I believe this. Sorry, this one doesn't give us JSON, but it does explain to reset the clock on this appliance. Locate the clock button on the control panel. It's located on the right side of the panel below the delay start button. Yes, it sure is. There it is. And then it explains how to reset the clock, and then it also gives us the same instructions in French, right? But it's really, really interesting, the translation as well as that. For you database folks out there, or anybody with a computer science background, you might notice this entity relationship diagram. if you know, I recently went back and got a master's, and I took a database class, and I spent a lot of time looking at these things, and I wish that I had this tool to help me explain what the heck is going on in these ER diagrams. So the model can understand that this is an ER diagram. It has the knowledge of what that means. You know, it understands the relationships between these entities, and it'll tell us, here's the entities, here's the relationship between them, and it even talks about the multiplicity and the cardinality of these relationships. And that makes it so much easier. It's so fast, right? It's really great. And then we can get some recommendations. This is a fun one. If you wear glasses like I do, you know, there's a couple of photos of glasses here. Which of these glasses would you recommend for me based on the shape of my face? I have an oval shaped face, right? You could even pass it an image of your face if you wanted to. So here's a couple of different options: glasses 1, glasses 2, and then a recommendation with some explanation. And in this case, we are actually outputting it as JSON, right? That's one of the other great things about Gemini in general, and also some of our other Palm models do this as well. But being able to get an output in a structured format so that you can pass it along to whatever downstream application needs the results of this, right? It's, you know, previously been notoriously difficult to constantly and, you know, reliably coerce a model to give you JSON output. That problem is solved with Gemini, right? So this makes it a lot easier to just integrate with other applications. So we have a JSON response with the recommendation as well as the reasoning. So glasses 2 are better suited for an oval face shape because they have a rounded shape that will help to soften the angles of your face. So very cool. We got a recommendation there. Let me go back over here. Yes. So yeah, similarity and differences. This one is one of my favorite demos. They're all my favorite demos. This is so cool. They got all this technology is great. So hard to pick a favorite kid, but we'll go ahead and run this one. And so we're seeing 2 different images here. So there's this one, okay, and this one below it. You're going to have to look really, really closely on this and think to yourself if you can see the difference between these 2 images, right? We're going to ask Gemini what it thinks the difference is between these 2 images. What's shown in image 1? What's similar between the 2 images, and what's the difference? So image 1 shows a square in Munich. It's surrounded by buildings, including I cannot pronounce that word, and I'm not going to try to. It has statues of Bavarian rulers. There are also a number of people walking around the square. Okay, that's an accurate depiction. Both images show the same square in Munich. Let's just double check that. Yeah, it's the same place. Okay. The square is surrounded by the same buildings, including the one that shall not be named. There are a number of people walking around the square. Okay, so very similar. And then the difference between image 1 and image 2 is that there are more people shown in image 1. Wait a minute. Let's see. Is that true? It sure is. It's the same image, but there's an extra person in image 1 that Gemini picked up on, and it knows that there's more people, right? And it says there are also some differences in the people shown in the 2 images. For example, the woman in the black coat in image 1 is not shown in image 2. Right. So it's like one of those little tests that we used to do as kids, you know, find the differences in the images. But the fact that we can just kind of do this out of the box with Gemini is pretty cool, right? There's a lot of different applications that this could be applied to, you know, defect recognition, like all kinds of different things that you can do in the enterprise. So here's a quick video. I'm going to pull this up, and we're just gonna take a real quick look at this video, and it looks like a place that I would like to go in this very moment at the end of December, right? But this is a really nice, beautiful location. If anybody who's attending this knows where this is, then that's fantastically cool. But I don't. So let's ask Gemini. So what's shown in this video? Where should I go to see it? And then what are some other places that look like it, right? So here we are again, interleaving our prompt with our video to Gemini. We'll go ahead and run this prompt. What is shown in this video? And then we have some cool helper functions in these notebooks that will help you display the videos so that you can actually kind of test it out. And then we'll look at the response. So currently it's still processing this video. It takes a little bit longer because it's a 30-second video. Just give Gemini a second to give us the response here. And it tells us the video shows a beautiful coastline with a city on a cliff. That's accurate. The water is crystal clear blue. The waves are crashing against the shore. The city is full of white buildings, and there is a long pier with boats docked along it. Yep, that's correct. You can see this in Antalya, Turkey. There are top five places in the world that look like this are Santorini. I thought it was Santorini when I first saw it. And then a couple of places in Italy and also Dubrovnik, Croatia. So again, this is the reason why this is a cool demo is because it's just it's using the knowledge of the world, right? We're not giving it any kind of structured data, just, hey, what is this? And Gemini has all of this knowledge about the world that it's using to give us that information, right? Here's some examples of extracting tags. So let's take a look at this video real quick. So this is a short one. It's a young guy standing up with a camera in his hand. He's going to take a couple of photographs here of some different items, right? And tagging is actually a use case that I've seen come up over and over and over again in my work speaking with Google customers. They want to be able to quickly tag things, right? It's about applying some structure to all of this unstructured data. And Gemini can help us with that. So again, we're interleaving the prompt with the video. We have, what is in the video? What is the action in the video? Provide the 10 best tags. So here it is displaying it again. Gemini is going to do a quick little analysis of this video and stream out the response for us. Give it just a moment here. Video processing does take a little bit of time, so just give it a moment. The video shows a man in a hat taking pictures of some artifacts on a table. He is taking pictures of the artifacts. Photography, art, travel, vacation, beach, sun, sand, water, right? So really interesting way to just kind of apply some tags to a video. Here's another example of a video showing a So it's an ad for a Pixel 8 phone of a photographer walking around Tokyo. So let's see, we're going to ask it using the video only, using no other context about the world, right? This is, you can tell Gemini, limit your response to just only use the information that you're being given. What is the profession of the main person? What are the main features of the phone that's highlighted? What city is this recorded in? Provide the answer in JSON. So I probably should have clicked that before I before I explain what's going on. But once again, we're taking this Pixel 8 video, interleaving it with that prompt, sending it over to Gemini, streaming the response, and then printing out the results here. So again, we'll give Gemini just a moment to process this video. And the JSON response that we get back, the profession is a photographer. The features, which I didn't really get to because it's later in the video, but the features that she's highlighting in the video are night sight and video boost. And it identifies the city as Tokyo. And it only identifies the city as Tokyo because she said that she's from Tokyo, right? But we can also use Gemini's knowledge about the world to give us additional information. So let's take a look at this one. I have no idea where this is, right? There's no other context about where this train is located. Some of you may be located near this train line. You might know what it is just by looking at it, but I have no idea. So Gemini can help us understand, based on what we've asked it, where this is, and it can give us some information about it. So instead of telling it to just limit its response to what it sees, we're just going to ask it, what is this, right? Which train line is this? Where does it go? What are the stations and stops, right? So from that video alone, we're going to be able to determine all of this information. So again, we're processing this video. Give it just a couple of moments here. And again, this is a really interesting multimodal use case that is just, impossible to build something like this a year ago, right? And now we just have this out-of-the-box functionality. So now we know that this is the O train Confederation line. It's a light rail line that goes from these places. And then these are the stations along that line. Pardon my scrolling there. And then it tells us all the different stations. And then you can find out, you can confirm that on Wikipedia to learn more about it if you want to. That's just kind of part of the sample notebook that helps you, sort of validate that the responses that Gemini is giving you are the ones that you're looking for. And yeah, so I think that's it for sort of the multimodal notebook, right? This is available again on GitHub to explain how to build this stuff, right? And it's really very straightforward. If you know Python, you'll be able to get through this just fine. The next thing that I want to talk about briefly is safety ratings, right? This is one of the more difficult things about deploying generative AI is making sure that you've got the right controls in place to ensure that you're not surfacing the wrong stuff to your users, whether that's inappropriate content or hallucinations and all of these other things. But we've built in these safety ratings and these thresholds to enable you to build the experience that's right for whoever your customer is, right? So on the large language model side, we'll just go ahead and move through some of this. Very similar kind of starting point here for those of you who want to try this out, just setting up your project ID, location, everything else. And we are importing these different harm category, block threshold. This is going to give us access to those responsible AI features. We're initiating our Gemini Pro model, and we're going to generate some text here. So, say 3 nice things about me, and then it gives me some nice things. And then we're going to look at the safety ratings here. So when you get that response back, you can investigate the safety ratings that the Gemini classified the response as, right? So for these 4 categories, harassment, hate speech, explicit, dangerous content, the probability is all negligible on those nice things, right? So you have access to these safety ratings, and you can use them however you need to, right? It's less about us being super prescriptive with Gemini about what you're allowed to say and not say, and more about you've got a little bit more control over that. We still won't show you anything. Like sometimes you'll get some blocked responses if you ask for something crazy, but this just gives you that sort of transparency and insight into what's going on with the model. So like, here's 5 disrespectful things that I might say to the universe after stubbing my toe in the dark. And then it generates a fairly humorous, like as if somebody would actually say this after stubbing their toe, but it's pretty hilarious. Still negligible, right? But we're still seeing the safety ratings. And then here's some examples of blocked responses. It'll finish with different safety ratings. Here's like harassment. This is all I get for the good vibes. I hope you stub your cosmic toe. So it's harassment, but it's pretty gentle harassment. So that's low. And dangerous content as well. Threatening harm, right? So the probability of that is low. And it says finish reason here in the response. Finish reason safety, right? It means that we're blocking that based on the harassment category, right? So really, really proud of the work that the Gemini team has done to sort of deploy this in a way where we can lean on that responsible AI work that Google has been doing for so long, and be able to put it into a product in a way where customers can go use it and feel like they've got some control over what's happening with the safety thresholds. So that's an example of how to use these safety ratings. And then the last thing that I want to talk about today is function calling. So this has been a question that folks have been asking us about pretty much all year. And what function calling is, it's a little bit difficult to explain, so bear with me. But the idea is that you want to be able to detect an intent of what a user is asking and then be able to route it somewhere, right? And in order to do that, you need to get their intent translated into some kind of a function call, right? You need to be able to understand what function you're calling, what parameters need to be sent to the model. And then once you have that structure, you can construct whatever the API call is that you need to do, right? So being able to do that reliably has been traditionally very challenging, right? There's been other solutions out there like Dialogflow that can do intent detection and fulfillment and things like this, but it's not really been a first class feature of a lot of these generative models until now, right? And this is something that exists on some other platforms, but it's here, and customers, like I said, have been asking for like crazy. So let's get an example of this because it's probably easier to show. So we're defining a function declaration here, right? So in this case, we are defining a get weather function, and this is not the code that's going to run when we get the weather. This is just the declaration of the function, what it looks like. So we have a name, get current weather, description, and then parameters that get passed to it. So there's a location that gets passed to it. So this is our function declaration. I should probably run that just so that we have it. And then there's this concept of a tool, right? So for those of you who are familiar with LangChain and LangChain agents, you can give those agents tools to fulfill their job, right? It could be Google search. It could be really like any kind of internal thing that you want to reach. But giving the agent those tools helps it give that understanding. This is the Gemini equivalent of that, right? So we now have a weather tool that consists of that function declaration that we built. So now when we ask, we give it a prompt. I should probably run that too. We give it a prompt, what is the weather like in Boston? Model.generate content with the prompt. We're giving it the configuration for temperature. We want that to not hallucinate at all. We're going to be pretty deterministic in our output. And then we pass it our weather tool in an array. We get the response. So let's run this. Okay. And you'll see that, so this is, this is generating from Gemini now. We have in our response, we have this function call response, right? It's got a name, it's got arguments, fields and whatnot. And this is going to help us understand what function we should call to get that result, right? So then you can pass this information, like we know that we need to call a get weather function, pass Boston to it. And then you can make that call yourself through curl or through whatever API call it is, right? It's kind of up to you how you want to fulfill this request. But the real key part of function calling is doing that intent detection, because in the prompt up here, what is the weather like in Boston? Gemini knows now that it doesn't really know like real-time information about weather in Boston. We need to be able to look that up, right? So it's detecting that that's what the user wants to know. I have a tool that can do that, and then we're invoking that tool to get the function declaration, and then we can pass it along. Here's a more complex example, right? This is a function declaration for getting latitude and longitude. A little bit more complex because we're actually going to run this and show it to you. So in this case, I want to get the lat and lon coordinates for the following address: 1600 Amphitheater Parkway, Mountain View, California. Bonus points if you know what exists at 1600 Amphitheater Parkway. Response model.generate content. We pass it the prompt, our generation configuration, and then our new tool that we defined up here that gets the location. We're going to run that. And it replies with the function call. We're going to be calling this get location using the city, country, postal code, state, street. It did all of the extraction of the address that we asked for. And then we can extract the pieces of this. And in this case, we are actually going to make a function call to the OpenStreetMap API. So it gives us the place ID, license information. And again, this is the Google HQ. We get all the information about that. So again, the real benefit of function calling is you have full control over these functions that you define, how you call them, like how you actually interface with these other tools, whether they're internal systems that you've built, internal APIs, external APIs, really like whatever you need to do in this case. It gives you a deterministic way to understand what function you need to call at a given time, and you have full control over it. So that's function calling. There's several other examples on this GitHub page. So there's even a sample application. There's like a Streamlit app that you can check out. That's got some. You can deploy it and run it, and check that out. It gives you some sort of hands-on examples that are more UI driven, if that's your preference. If you don't want to do everything in a notebook, you can deploy that Streamlit app in a Cloud Run container and start playing with it. I messed with it a little bit yesterday. It's very cool. So to kind of close off here, we're in a moment, we're going to head back to the slides. But if you go to ai.google.dev, that's sort of our landing zone for everything developer content related for Gemini, right? So definitely take a look at that. Try to remember ai.google.dev. We explain how Gemini works, how to integrate it into your applications, as well as, on this page, you'll see some of our performance benchmarks that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. And it's a great way to get started. So with that, let's head back to the slide deck. And on the next slide here, we're just going to go through some developer resources. And Keelan, I know this has been a labor of love for you. If you want to take over here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those demos, Dan. That was great. So as Dan mentioned, our home base for all things Gemini is really this ai.google.dev. So when in doubt, I would definitely recommend starting there, and you can usually link your way to the right resource that you need. Number two, a lot of those resources that Dan just showed are available in our new Gemini folder on our GenAI GitHub repo. So check that out. The Gemini resources are great, but if you've never explored it before, there's also a lot of fantastic stuff that we've built out over the last few months around our other models as well. So that can be a really terrific place to get going. We have this new page called GenAI Tutorials. So this is kind of designed, again, to be kind of a jumpstart environment for you to get going if you are wanting to build your first GenAI app. So our DevRel team created these just for Gemini. And I think it's a really nice interface for developers, especially maybe app developers that are new to the AI space. And then finally, I think many of you are aware of this, but we also do have our Google Cloud community. So this is a nice place to, kind of explore message boards, ask questions, look up information from other Google Cloud developers. So we've definitely tried to invest more in making the AI ML space there a little bit more active. We've done a lot of GenAI events over the last 2 months in particular. So another just good resource to be aware of as a GenAI developer. All righty. Let's see here. So I think at this point, we'll just spend the last kind of couple minutes here going through some Q&A. And let's see here. Actually, Dan, maybe you could take this first one. What are the best ways for developers to integrate Gemini into their current applications? Any tips or thoughts on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can really just view Gemini as an API endpoint, right? That you can access through our various different libraries and frameworks support. In the Python library, there's Java, there's JavaScript, and several other platforms that are supported here. It's completely up to you how you want to integrate it. If you just want to use curl, right? But I would view it as this is your sort of expert multimodal model that you can kind of lean on to solve a lot of these complex use cases. Just view it as a service that you can call. But definitely testing is important. Evaluation is important. I'm sure that we're going to have a session upcoming maybe in the new year about evaluation and like understanding how to deploy these things in a way that's going to align to your business objectives. But it's a pretty straightforward process. It's not like there's not a lot to it. So.
Yeah. And that is the nice thing about these managed endpoints over these models. I mean, these models are obviously like massive feats of engineering, research, and all sorts of other brilliant people contributing to them. But ultimately, they get kind of harnessed into this REST API endpoint that millions and millions of people can use as developers. So that is like the really nice part about that delivery mechanism. All right. Maybe I'll take this one because this is a very common question I'm hearing. Is Gemini going to interface with the workspace platform? And I might actually broaden this to more general questions I've gotten about how Gemini might interface with BigQuery or AppSheet or other Google product or Google Cloud products. So the short answer is you're going to see Gemini across the Google ecosystem. So today you see it in Bard. You're going to start to see it roll out as the back end of Duet AI, if you're familiar with that product, both in Workspace and in cloud and other environments that Duet is available in. You're going to start to see it, yes, in Workspace as part of that Duet AI stack, as well as BigQuery and some of these other products. So right now, again, it's in a few products, and you'll generally see that explicitly called out. So if you're a Bard user, you'll see that called out on the Bard page. If you're not seeing it called out and you're seeing that some of these products are still using Palm or other models, I think over time, especially in the first half of 2024, you're increasingly going to see sort of powered by Gemini as part of a lot of these products, because it is sort of a critical part of our overall product strategy. We do believe it is our kind of best model right now, and we want to make sure that we're bringing that to users across our different products. So like I said, it's already in a few products, it's coming to more products. So definitely stay tuned for those updates. Ooh, this is a good one. Any recommendations on RAG frameworks for Gemini? I'll give that one to Dan for sure.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So if you're not familiar with, for those of you listening, if you're not familiar with what RAG is, stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, right? And this is where you're sort of understanding maybe through function calling, right? Like what the user's asking. And you want to go retrieve some data from a database somewhere, from some other data store, from a set of embeddings that are living in a database, right? You want to be able to augment the model's content or even restrict it to some known data set, right? And so you're retrieving it, you're augmenting that data with the generative capabilities of the model. That's the point of the RAG framework. And it's a really common pattern that's been utilized kind of across many different enterprises. The nice thing about the way that Gemini has been deployed here, you can plug it into LangChain and use those types of those types of patterns for retrieval augmented generation. There's also, for not Gemini yet, but for our Palm family of models, you're able to ground those responses through the user interface, in fact, to like a Vertex search and conversation data store. You can use it to basically build a RAG pipeline without having to do all of the embedding stuff at all, right? There's ways to do that with almost no lift using the Palm family of models anyway. But for Gemini specifically, any kind of RAG work you want to do, just view Gemini as like yet another model that you can perform that same work with, right? Because Gemini is going to be the generative aspect of the RAG approach. The retrieval augmented component, which usually involves generating embeddings, doing similarity searches and those things. Keelan mentioned like Pinecone, Cosmo. What's the one? Yeah, there's a few other ones that are escaping me now, but other open source databases that you can use, and it's really just about following established patterns, but using Gemini for the retrieval augmented component of it. I believe, I'm not sure yet. I think we do have first party support now for Gemini in LangChain. So if you want to start experimenting with RAG techniques today, you should be able to find that in the LangChain library.
Yes, that is correct. So we worked closely with LangChain to make sure that we had that ready on day one when Gemini launched. So we're super excited to get that out the door on December 13th. And I think we've got one more question here. So can Gemini generate images as well as intake them? So right now, from a multimodal perspective, Gemini is multimodal in the sense that input can be multimodal. I think longer term, as I mentioned in sort of the initial slides, our ambition with Gemini is to evolve that to be more and more multimodal, whether that's accommodating new modalities like audio and other things like that, or also incorporating multimodality into the output. In terms of image generation, though, if you do want to do an image generation use case today, as Dan mentioned, we do have our Imagine model, which just got a new stable release last week, actually. So the new version is really impressive. I think, like, especially if you're into like sort of photorealistic image generation, things like hair and hands and all those things that these models were just like really struggling with even 6 months ago. The new version of Imagine 2, really creates some stunning images. The other big update to Imagine that I'll mention too is the ability to produce logos or coherent text. So if you remember back to the early days of these image gen models, a year or two ago, or if you asked them to produce text, you just kind of get this like random mix of characters or strings, and it didn't make a ton of sense. Those days are over. So the new Imagine model, actually, if you say, produce me a toothpaste tube that says Dan on it, it actually can do things like that. So that's really cool, especially if you have like marketing use cases or sort of particular kind of branding use cases like that. So definitely check out those updates. There's a lot of cool stuff there. And I think that's all we have in terms of questions here. I will also, just kind of closing out here, mention that in addition to the Gemini announcements and the Imagine announcements I just mentioned, we did have a couple sort of secondary announcements that came out, such as the public availability of distillation, which is a new sort of tuning method, auto side-by-side, which is a new LLM eval service, which we'll probably be talking a lot more about in 2024, because 2024 is going to be the year of LLM ops, I'm sure. But definitely, as you're kind of experimenting with Gemini, those are other kind of good Vertex services to check out, because many of them are complementary. So right now you might be early in your journey just in terms of experimenting with prompts, but the closer you get to building applications, putting those applications into production, you're going to need to kind of think more holistically about some of these other services on Vertex, some of these third-party services that might also help you with workflows. So all of that, all of those announcements, again, should be on ai.google.dev, but definitely would encourage you to check those out. All right. With that, I think we will close out for the year. So thank you so much for spending an hour with us here so close to the holidays. We hope you all have a wonderful holiday break here, and we're looking forward to bringing you more great Gen AI news in 2024.
Thanks, everybody.